Welcome to the Bowhunter Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, editor Christian Berg.
All right, welcome back to the Bowhunter Podcast. We are all bow hunting all the time, and today I am really excited because we have got a couple great guests for you, and I'm going to introduce both of them in turn. And I'm going to start with a legend of archery and bow hunting. The last living survivor of the original group that started the Pope and Young Club, 90 years young, out of the great state of Missouri, Mr. Harv Ebers. Harv, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome, Kristen.
And the other guest who really deserves the credit for facilitating today's show is Mr. Tom Vanasche. Did I pronounce that right, Tom?
Well, it's difficult to write. It's Vanasche.
Vanasche.
Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Tom Vanasche. And are you from New York State?
No, I lived most of my life in Oregon, but I moved to Wyoming the last couple of years.
Wyoming. Okay. I don't know where I got New York. I thought that's what your phone had shown up as, but I must have been really confused.
I think so.
well, anyway, I am often confused as I explain to these guys. It's been so busy here at the Bowhunter editorial offices. They've had deadlines upon deadlines, but I'm glad that we're making time for this because, Tom, you had actually reached out to Kurt Wells, our editor at large, with an article about some hunting adventures that you and Harv had shared. And when I saw some of the things that you mentioned in this article about Harv and all that he had done, I thought, what an interesting guy and what an interesting friendship you two have shared, and what a great topic it would make for a podcast, and to hear some of these stories about, recent hunts and things that happened, quite some time ago that are really notable in the history of modern bow hunting. So here we are. Tom, do you want to kind of set the stage?
Well, it was maybe 15 years ago. Harv and I went down to Mexico on a Pope and Young adventure where it was to try to save the jaguars by paying money to hunt on ranches in Mexico where there were jaguars that would pay for any cow losses that they had, and then they wouldn't kill the jaguars. I don't know how effective that was, but that's where Harv and I met quite some time ago, and we bunked together and discovered we had a lot of things in common. We were stick bow guys and left-handed, and Harv was much more the athletic individual, as he was actually played basketball and baseball in college, where I just muddled along.
Yeah, I got to ask you, Harv, because as I said at the outset, 90 years young, but you were quite the athlete, and you were a scholarship pitcher for the University of Missouri as a left-hander, and you played minor league ball, and you did that for quite a while, I guess, until one of your coaches told you maybe you should go do something else. Is that right?
That's correct. I had a little minor league stint for a year or two with the White Sox, and one day the coach called me in and says, "Ebers," that's me. He says, "You're a graduate civil engineer from the University of Missouri," and he says, "I don't think you're ever gonna play AAA ball nevertheless the majors," and he says, "I'd recommend you go home and get off these damn buses and go forward with your life. And so I took his advice, and here I am running around with people like Vanasche. So there you are. But my joy, Chris, Kristen, has been the Pope and Young Club, and Tom and I both have been active in the Pope and Young Club. And I think you stated earlier, possibly, that I'm the only living member of the original 5 or 6 guys that at Seattle, Washington in 1957, 58, 59 was where we conceived of the Pope and Young Club, because at that time the western states, many of them did not allow bow hunting for big game such as elk, moose, or sheep, or what have you. And so a man by the name of Glenn St. Charles, who was really our manager, had a nice archery shop there south of Seattle where we all lived all the time. And he organized, says, guys, we've got to, the only thing Game and Fish pays any attention to is statistics. So we've got to develop a archery bow hunting national organization patterned on the Boone and Crockett. So the rest is history, gentlemen. Without a lot of detail, the Pope and Young Club was formed and is today, as you know, a thriving national and international organization to preserve, protect, and promote the art of bow hunting in the the United States and Canada and wherever in the hell you want to bow hunt.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot, Harv, and there's a lot to unpack in between the day that you decided to leave the minor league baseball game and when Pope and Young, was founded and all the hunting and things that transpired in between. So I guess I got to probably back up even before college and ask, did you grow up as a hunter, as an outdoorsman? And if you did, how did that sort of continue after you stopped playing baseball and I guess got a real job, as they say?
I got a real job. That's correct. As an engineer, well, like many men, especially of my age, we our years were formed, like possibly yourself, Kristen, and you, Tom, by your parents. My dad was a very avid coon hunter. I grew up with hounds. We had Missouri bobwhite, a lot of quail. I grew up as an upland game hunter, a shotgun, of course, with a couple old setters. But I always did play around for some reason with little old toy bows and arrows. And when I was at the university, I visited a city park one time. Some guys were shooting these things with today we call recurves. So from there on, I got intrigued, and just like both of you gentlemen, the interest, archery and bow hunting especially, is so intriguing that you just gravitate to it, and then you grow by experience, running around with, miniatures and what have you. And then, of course, we're blessed here in the United States. If you're on the west coast, where you got all the big game, the mountain animals here in Missouri. Later on, we had the introduction of whitetail deer, and then as both of you, man, you just grow in the sport, Kristen, and get more experience. And then over those years, the Pope and Young Club grew from a little band of 5 to we're a national international organization with a biannual convention somewhere, and all the 29 recognized big game species in the Pope and Young record book are on display. As Tom and I just here in April was in Arizona at a Pope and Young convention. And by the way, Kristen, we need to get you involved. You're your mentor at Bowhunter magazine, M.R. James, always was very active in the Pope and Young Club. The magazine supported the PNY. And in fact, MR was on the board, and then at one time was a president of the organization for a term. So we need to get Kristen Berg invited, and you need to follow your your mentors track.
Absolutely. Of course, Dwight Shue, took over from MR, and then Kurt Wells, who's our editor at large now, and my boss, Jeff Waring, the publisher you probably saw out there at Pope and Young. And I imagine you've known Jeff and Kurt over the years, and those guys are still actively involved. So you're right, Harv. Good on you for calling me out. I need to be there at the next convention with you, right?
That's right. It's going to be the next convention is going to be in the center of the United States, Tom and Kristen, to facilitate everybody, coming equal distance, like the state fair to Missouri. It's going to be at Little Rock, Arkansas, and it'll be a great menu. It won't be near as pricey as Arizona, Arkansas was. And you'll just have to come, Kristen, and meet all of the hierarchy of bow hunting. Frank Noska, Tom Miranda.
I love those guys. They both write for us, and I've known Tom for quite some time, and Frank I've gotten to know a little bit over the last couple of years, and he's been writing some good articles for us as well. Harv, I wanted to ask you, it sounds like, based on what Tom had mentioned in his article, that you started making your own bows pretty soon after you discovered archery. And if I'm kind of putting two and two together, you were making your own bows even before you really started bow hunting. Is that correct?
No, I bow hunted originally. I'm trying to think. I think Earl Hoyt, the famous Hoyt that we know as a compound bows, started out. Hoyt Archery was a man by the name of Earl Hoyt in St. Louis, Missouri area, and he made a fantastic recurves that the Olympic shooters shot back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so anyway, I was blessed to have an old mentor back in them days who his hobby was making recurve bows, modern recurve bows with garden fiberglass on the face and back, etc. He taught me the art of making a recurve and with the forms and everything. So I decided when I went at that point in my life, I was going to put Fred Bear out of business. So I was going to start building quality recurve bows. And after about 80 or 90 of them, and I'd give them, and I sold a few, 2 or 3 Tom Vanasche, they blew up on me. And kind of like baseball, after a while, I decided that I'd better go home and become an engineer and not be competitive with bear archery. So there you are.
Well, you started out with a pretty lofty goal to put old Papa Bear out of business, and then you figured maybe just getting a job was the way to go, huh?
It absolutely was, and you'll find that just like you, I know your dream as a young man was maybe to be the feature at a national hunting magazine, but you'll find out now you're so damn busy that you don't get to hunt like you would like. You can't be like Wells and Shue that, they snuck out of the office and ran all over the world bow hunting, and you haven't probably learned how to get away from the editorial demands so that you can hunt as much as you want to, Kristen. So
Not as
There you go.
effectively as those guys did. You must be listening to me. Do you have a secret microphone in my office? And do you hear me complaining, Harv, about how I'm tied to my computer too often?
I understand life, and when you get old like Vanasche and Ebers, why you understand those things, and we understand the constraints of you young people with all this modern technology. After all, I'm talking to you on a $25 Walmart flip-top phone. I'll be damned if I'm going to get constrained like you are with all of this modern needs of the world.
Well, and that is so for everyone who's listening to this episode, no problem. But for those who may be on YouTube, you might just see a picture of Harv and Tom on the screen, because these guys, this is the old school episode this week. These guys do it the old fashioned way with traditional archery tackle and flip phones, and if that's not good enough, they're not worried about it, because they've been succeeding with traditional archery tackle. And heck, there was no flip phones when you made your first hunt in Alaska, right, Harv?
Oh no, I disappeared for about 3 or 4 weeks. Where was I? Up around Glen Allen, the Denali Highway, the Talkeetnas, when I killed that caribou, and I was blessed up there. A federal game warden found me wandering around up there on a little old 90-mile gravel road. Went to Mount McNeil from Paxton's Lodge, was a little filling station, and he found me wandering around up there trying to intercept the Nelchina. I heard of caribou migrating south, and hell, they were 50 miles south of where I was already. And he took me under wing and got me into the caribou, and I was blessed to shoot a nice 400 class caribou at that time. It's a wonder I didn't shoot a cow, Tom, because the cows have pretty decent horns. And hell, I didn't know a caribou what it hardly was, although I knew they were beautiful in pictures when I was at Missouri, and I was determined to shoot a caribou, and I was blessed. The one I shot was a good bull. So that's my story, Kristen.
As I recall, Harv, you went through about all your arrows, and you had 2 left because you had these caribou migrating around you by the hundreds, but you couldn't get close enough. But you were launching and unsuccessfully, and I think you got down to 2 arrows, if I'm not mistaken, and decided, well, instead of chasing these caribou, I should let them come to me. And so you kind of hunkered down, and some cows walked by, and then this monster that he nicknamed Goliath, and he got an arrow in Goliath, and the rest is history. But you were down to the last couple of arrows, I think.
That's correct. I had, as you know, the airlines in those days. I just had this old recurve that Tom's got, Kristen, that he shot that little whitetail here a year or so ago. Anyway, I had it in a little old cloth sack unstrung, and I had a cardboard box with 12 old wood arrows with old super Hillary points that I'd fletched and glued the points on. And when I walked in the door of the airplane, the hostess nonchalantly took it from me, and there was a closet there, and she just set it in the closet. She said, Mr. Ebers, it'd be too unwieldy where you're going to sit. So anyway, yes, I had 12 bullets. Barney Fife had 12 bullets, and I was down to a couple, 3 bullets when I finally figured these damn caribou out and let them come to me. But
and Tom mentioned earlier that you briefly had a world record for caribou. Was that from this very hunt, or was that a different time, or what, Harv?
No. Well, down and this, I know that this podcast can't be that long, but so I want to be brief. But until my time in the 57, 58, 59, nobody. Alaska was like going to one of the exotic Iranian areas that Miranda goes to shoot some kind of exotic sheep. Alaska was exotic, like going to Iran today. Hoffman and Frost and Miranda, you understand, Chris and Tom, what I'm talking about. So this was my first venture out of a tree trying to shoot a whitetail. In fact, most of my whitetails were shot on the ground, but at that time in my life. But St. Charles was talking about him and Bear. There was a famous book St. Charles wrote, Bow Hunting on the Little Delta, and he and a couple, three other guys that were on a little board of directors thing at the Pope and Young Club's inception. They were a couple hundred miles bow hunting bear in St. Charles, from where I was hunting, and shot my old big caribou. And that damn bear, a few days later or a week, Tom shot his bull. And if you look in the Pope and Young Club record books, I think bears and my old R59 entries were probably two of the older, if not the oldest, entries in the Pope and Young Club record book. So the point I'm making, there was no history of bow hunting in Alaska. Unbeknown to me, we were in St. Charles and his ventures at that time. We were kind of, early penetrators of Alaska with the damn bow and arrow. I cuss a little bit. Anyway, that's the story. There was no. I had an old Pendleton shirt and a pair of Levi's, and I don't know, Tom, you saw some of them pictures of me that the game warden took of me on the old Denali Highway. I don't know what I was thinking about, Kristen. Heck, I was in an old rental car roaming around this gravel road trying to shoot a caribou until that game warden found me and felt sorry for me and took me under his wing.
He didn't even have a hat.
I didn't even have a hat. And there was no Kuyu or a Bass Pro down garments. I don't know. And I just had a dozen old wood arrows. So, but when you're 25, I was about 25 years old then, and an old farmer from Missouri or whatever I was.
Hey, Harv, can you hear me? Hey,
yes,
Harv,
sir.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry, my internet went out for about the last 45 seconds. I was completely gone. Did you guys even know it?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay, listen, that's fine. Go ahead.
Or maybe your internet was just editing my story.
No, not at all. But here's what I need you to do, because I'm still recording, but I was temporarily cut off. So what I'm going to ask you to do, you were talking when I got cut off about how Fred Bear had just killed another bull that was a little bit bigger than yours, I guess, like 100 miles away or something like that.
That's correct. So, Bear, go ahead. Bear in St. Charles. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just pick up from there.
Well, Bear and St. Charles were a couple hundred miles northwest towards my last Fairbanks from me as a crow flies. And Bear killed a large caribou, I don't know, 8 or 10 points bigger than mine. So in theory, Ebers for a week maybe had a world's record, and then I was demoted by some guy named Fred Bear to number 2 slot a week later. So being a rock star sometimes doesn't last very long, Kristen. So that.
Well, I mean, I liked what you said about how those were sort of the early days of Alaska. and the early days of the club. And, you know, for younger people, when you think about it, it's like, man, those were really the good old days because, to your point, there really weren't many or any caribou in the record book at that time. I mean, heck, we could have all gone up there and shot 5 or 6 bulls, and those would have been the top 5 or 6 bulls in the record book because they'd have been the only 5 or 6 bulls in the record book, right? So, I mean, it's a lot harder to get a new world record today than it was back in those early days, right, Harv?
That's correct. So if you shoot probably one of the first caribou with a bow and arrow in Alaska in October of '59, and naturally it's a classy animal. But the neat thing that Tom and Chris and I have reflected on about my life and my adventures back there in Alaska in '59. Just all of a sudden here the last few years, I realized the uniqueness of some 25-year-old guy from Missouri wandering off in Alaska on his own in an old rental car out of Anchorage, drove that 200 or 300, 400 miles up to the Denali Highway, thinking I was going to shoot a caribou, and God provided for me or blessed me, and I had a game warden find me up there wandering around. He thought that I was probably poaching for moose. He thought because I was hunting in all the wrong spots and creek and on little creeks and stuff, and really caribou are more high ground, and they cross little ridges and what have you. So anyway, the point I'm making it. Unbeknown to me, that was rather a adventurous little episode that Ebers had made at that time, Tom and Kristen.
Yeah. Now,
one thing
go ahead.
One thing I found fascinating, Christian, and the younger listeners might revel at this, that in 1959, there was 1 or 2 credit cards available in the world. And I think Harv had a Standard Oil credit card, and Hertz was the only rental agency around.
That's correct, Tom. I worked for a large, I got my job with a large construction engineering company called Gardner Denver Equipment Company. And they, when I went to work for them in Seattle in '57 or so, they issued me a Standard Oil credit card and then a little company Ford. Well, naturally, I flew to Anchorage and I used that credit card. You could at that time buy you could shoot 3 caribou, and you had to buy a $25 tag for each caribou. Well, I probably didn't have $50 in my billfold, so I just wanted to kill 1 caribou anyway. And so I bought one $25 caribou tag, and with my company credit card, rented the from Hertz. There was only one rental car in the world at that time called Hertz, and so I rented an old Chevy. I remember an old '54 Chevy car. And how you say, well, how did you, Ebers? That's me. How did you figure out how to go up to the Denali, up to Glen Highway, about a couple hundred miles to Glen Island, then turn on the Richardson Highway, and then intersect with this gravel road called the Denali Highway at that time? Well, at Seattle until it still is to this day, a renowned taxidermist company called I can't remember the name of it. Tom, you know who I'm trying to say.
Kleinberger?
Yeah, Kleinbergers.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, Kleinberger owned it. It wasn't the Kleinberger brothers owned it there and at Denver, Colorado. Oh my lands. Anyway, I stopped by there. And I stopped
they-
by there, and they said, well, we have a skinning shop at Anchorage, and all the hunters at that time, they were flying, and they had caribou, grizzles. Well, there wasn't that many hunters to begin with. There was no bow hunters. There were at that time there were, of course, gun hunters to some degree, and they would drop their animals off. The pelts would be salted down and flown commercially to Seattle to oh my land almost anyway flowing here. So they told me Kleinberger Bert, I think it was Bert that it was there, or it said Ebers, if you go to our skinning shop, them hunters tell you where they were shooting caribou, and that's how I found that I should just manager there at Anchorage said, Ebers, you should, if you can get up to the Denali Highway, this Nelchina herd is available by car, possibly. So that's how I come to, gentlemen, how I come to wind up on the Denali Highway, running up and down there, freezing to death, trying to kill a caribou.
That's how they did it, kids, before Onyx maps and all this whiz-bang technology. Yeah. You just stopped at the old skinning shed in Anchorage with your rental car, and the guy there would tell you, hey, I got a hot tip for you. Go about 200 miles up the dirt road and then turn on another dirt road for another 100 miles, and you might run into some caribou. Good luck. Hey, listen.
That's correct.
Hey, Tom, I want to hear from you because you had an opportunity to go and hunt whitetails with Harv at his place in Missouri in 2019. And I think that's where you actually got your hands on this same bow that Harv used on this hunt, correct?
That's right. And it's got to be extra special because it's a left-handed bow, and I happen to be left-handed as well. And he had it hanging up in a special place, and I asked him about it. And then there were these pictures of him as a young man with his caribou named Goliath. And, of course, Goliath is hanging right there, too. Very impressive, even though he was 60 years old at the time. And I said, well, I wonder if I could shoot that thing. And there was a string on it that looked like it was 65 years old, too. And I didn't know whether it might blow up, but Harv said, well, give it a whirl. And I'm shooting a modern longbow, but reflex deflex type. And I actually, even though I'm, quote, traditional, and I shoot a fiberglass wooden combo bow, I shoot microcarbon arrows. And I thought, well, it'll be interesting to put a microcarbon arrow on there. And it was whisper quiet. I mean, I have not shot a bow that was that quiet. And the string held up, and he had a target down the way. And I was like hammering these in at 20, 25 yards. And I decided, well, for the rest of my hunt here at Harv's, I'm going to be packing this bow and see what I can do with it. And apparently all the animals knew that I was pretty good at it, so they never showed up. They stayed away from me.
But then... But then a few years or more recently, I shouldn't say a few years later, maybe a little more than a handful of years later, Harv actually sent this bow to you, correct?
That's right. Because I said, well, someday I want to kill something with that bow to make my life complete. And well, son of a gun, that wasn't a big PVC pipe shows up here one day, and it's got his bow in it and a new string from the Black Widow people, and it still was shooting those microcarbons really well. And I had an opportunity to hunt on a friend's place in Colorado for mule deer, and I just totally choked a couple of shots that I should have made. And I don't know how I missed it. One was a absolute giant, and it was only a forked horn, but it was a monster forked horn. My buddy and I thought it was a spike elk to begin with, body wise in the brush, and then I actually got within 15 yards and put an arrow right underneath it, and was cussing myself and thinking, well, I got to get redemption here somehow. And on my place in Wyoming, there'd been kind of one of those EHC epidemics, and a lot of the deer populations way down, but I still had several kind of walking by, nothing real big. But I had after about the 5th or 6th day on my stand, I had a pretty nice 8-pointer come by, and by golly, I got an arrow through his heart, and the bow had come full cycle. 65 years later, it still worked perfectly.
That is great. So there's a lot of history with this bow, but it's still being made. This was when, Tom? Just like last year?
Last November.
Last November in Colorado. That is,
well, the deer I missed was in Colorado. The deer I killed was in Wyoming.
Oh, okay. Back home in Wyoming. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Very good. And Harv, how does it make you feel knowing that, animals are still falling to this bow that you built way back in the 50s?
Well, I think the old bow is not a Tom and Ebers a story. What we're saying is what really generated this interest in contacting you, Kristen, was the uniqueness that an old recurve that started out was born in 1959, killed a good caribou in Alaska. I killed 5 black bear with that bow, a bunch of deer, a good mountain lion, a good bobcat, and I'm trying to think what else. But with it before I retired it back in the 60s. But the uniqueness is that old bow hadn't been strung. I bet that bow hadn't been strung for 40 years before Tom spotted it here couple 3 years ago on my wall, and I said, well, let's string her up and shoot it. And so the old bow is now 65 years later killed a nice whitetail buck. So the story on this podcast is about that old bow, not some old man named Harv Ebers.
Oh, I think it's about both. And I'll tell you what, you talk about doing things differently. We talked about the technology and how much simpler things were, back in the day, certainly from a technology standpoint. But you think about nowadays, guys want to get a new compound bow every year or 2 or 3. And here, you guys are running around with 65-year-old bows killing better stuff than we can with our $1,000 Matthews. You're still teaching the young dogs new tricks, Harv. And Tom too.
I'll tell you.
I didn't ask. Hang on one second, Harv. I didn't ask you, Tom. Maybe it's not polite, but I figure I got to because it seems like it's germane for the episode. How old are you, Tom?
I am 73.
So just a young man compared to Harv.
Yes.
And go ahead, Harv. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to
kind of like Harv. I don't lift quite as many weights as Harv, but we've stayed active, we've stayed fit, and I don't take any meds, and hopefully I'll be around when I'm 90 killing some hogs with Harv when he's 107.
Yeah, that's right. Tom, I should have brought that up earlier. Tom made a point to mention to me that you're still lifting weights at age 90, Harv.
Well, I have reduced my my floor mat format for my daily lifting, but yes, I still do, and I really believe that what we all know, but we seldom follow in our lives. I've been blessed as an athlete, and then busy in life. I've never smoked in my life. I'll enjoy a beer if it's 110 degrees, but I'm not much on alcohol. but I've exercise is a big part of longevity, gentlemen, I think, and a healthy lifestyle, and that's the secret to living to be 90. So when I was 73, like Tom, my avocation, bow hunting, Kristen, and I think Tom knows it, was elk. I elk hunted for 27 years in a row from when I was in my 80s till I was in my early 70s. And then I got so I just couldn't handle. I couldn't get it sucking up air at 8 and 10,000 chasing an old bull and 10 or 15 cows going up a side hill out of a canyon. So I had to quit elk hunting. And then another buddy of mine, Tom, he's now deceased, a Hall of Famer in the Pope and Young Club, Jim Daugherty was an old legend. And Daugherty and I used to elk hunt together, Chama, New Mexico, out of Grand Junction, Colorado. But the only thing I still have a nice little modest workout, gentlemen, that I do with weights and a rowing machine and what have you. So all you young people listening to this, exercise.
And I want to give a shout out to the late great Jim Daugherty, your old buddy, Harv, because before I came over here as editor-in-chief at Bowhunter, I was the editor of Peterson's Bowhunting for 15 years. And for most of those 15 years until he passed away, Jim Daugherty wrote the Trails End column, which was on our back page. And, he mentioned you quite often in those columns over the years, Harv. So even though you and I have never talked until today, I was aware of you here and there because Jim mentioned many of the escapades that you had. And, I don't know if I'm remembering this right, but I'm just curious, did you ever happen to join Jim on any of his forays out onto Catalina Island to shoot goats?
Yeah. No, I didn't know Daugherty till really till the Pope and Young Club days, Kristen, and that's something as an old timer I really missed out on. My only venture west was, as I've discussed thoroughly here in this conversation, is Seattle, then back home to Missouri, but that Catalina Island would have been a bow hunter's dream, especially a beginning bow hunter, with all of those goats. And I can't remember what all. Did they have hogs on Catalina?
I think they did have some. If I recall correctly from Jim's columns, I think there were some pigs out there. Yeah.
Okay. But it was a great bow hunter's feast. But Daugherty, really, I got running around with Daugherty during our ventures for 35, 40 years that we were in the Pope and Young Club together. And then Daugherty was a whitetail freak like Bear. Bear would rather, when I was on the board for 30 years of the Pope and Young Club, and a few years Bear was on the board, and Bear would rather hunt whitetail deer than any Siberian tiger that he shot, or you follow, or up in with Munger, the famous old outfitter up in British Columbia. And Daugherty was like him too. Daugherty was a whitetail freak, and I grew up, where I'm sitting here, as Tom knows, where I'm sitting here talking to you, Kristen, 500 yards from here. I bet in the last 20 years, I've lived in this house for 25 years. I bet I've shot 30, 40 deer within 500 yards of where I'm sitting. I've never given a dang about much about whitetail hunting, and it just frustrated Daugherty. And my passion is hogs. I like to shoot things. You guys set up a tree in November, freeze your rear end off, shoot one old arrow at an old whitetail deer. That's what Daugherty did for all his life. I can go down in Texas in the 70, 60, 70 degrees in the wintertime, shoot a half dozen hogs and be comfortable. So there you are.
Hey, I tell you what, hogs are probably the most made for bow hunting animal going, because to your point, Harv, they're prolific. So there's usually plenty of them if you're in good hog country. And if you do screw up a stalk or you miss a shot, you don't have to feel too badly about it like you do with a big whitetail. Sometimes if you're hunting that big buck, you might work for weeks or months, like you said, to get one shot. And if you screw it up, that may be the only encounter you get with that thing. And you about wake up in a cold sweat every night for the next 6 weeks, reliving the pain. Whereas when you go down there to Texas on a hog hunt, if you miss a hog, what do? You just go find another hog.
Find another one. And another one and anybody, and I'm sure it sounds like you have hunted them, Kristen. Yes. One of the smartest animals I've ever hunted is an old adult feral. Yeah. If it wasn't for shell corn with a bow and arrow, I defy you to crawl up on an old solitary sow with a bunch of pigs and get within bow distance. You can lay out there on a winter wheat field in Texas with a 22 250 or a 270 whatever rifle, a couple hundred yards, and they're out there in that winter wheat, shoot them all day long. But when you got to get inside of 20, 25 yards, or even I prefer closer, 15 yards is my best shot. Anyway, but back to old Dartery. So Dartery, he thought that I was a sinner when like I'm a Catholic, so you know what sin is. So he thought I was a bad sinner because hogs was my passion, and he would hardly speak to me at times. And then he would just roll his eyes at me when I'd tell a good hog story. So that's my relationship with your buddy Dartery. No, Dartery and I were big buddies. We hunted whitetail in Illinois together and shot whitetails in Illinois. But Dartery now, given Jim, Dartery, in my opinion, was a true legend like Bear. No, I will always honor Jim Dartery.
I think that I was going to say,
don't you think bird hunted with Doherty a great deal too, didn't you?
Yes, I waterfowled with him. Dartery was a world-class duck caller. He won all kind of national contests with ducks, and of course we duck hunted in Oklahoma. I had a friend there who had a wonderful, I've never had mallard, pintails, and what have you. And I would pick Dartery up. He lived at Tulsa, and we'd go on over towards Ada, Oklahoma. Dartery was a crack shot with him and I both had old Belgian Browning superimposed. And Dartery was a real competitive guy, too. I mean, whatever you did with Dartery was going to be a competition. And as you both know, he was president of the organization on the board, and in my opinion, there's only ever will be in a Pope and Young Club one Jim Dartery. He was so unique.
Well, I can't argue with that, but I think, Tom, that Harv is selling himself short a little bit, don't you think? Not putting himself in the same category with those other guys. I think Harv's a living legend.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. Kristen, that's the main part of your living legend. We'll drop the legend and just say, "Oh, Harv is still living." That's a good ending to the Harv Ebers era.
Well, not only are you still. Yes, talk about that a little bit, Tom. I mean, gosh, I mean, he's inspired, an awful lot of people over the years.
For sure. And, the people that don't know him in person, other than he looks a little old, nowhere near 90, he still has the physique of a college athlete. I mean, he's probably got 3% body fat. He's still 6'3" or whatever, and just lean and a goer. So he's kind of my hero. I'm hoping I can match up with him, but Another interesting thing on that Hertz rental car, he'd go out and get snowed and rained, and he only had one set of clothes, and he had a big coat that he'd curl up in, and he'd turn the heater on in the car to get dry, and then he'd try to sleep in his big coat. But again, before the days of Kuyu and Sitka.
How did you kill any of those caribou without scent lock clothing and ozonics there, Mr. Ebers?
Well, I think the secret to my success, gentlemen, was this game warden put me on this Nelchina, got me back off of the Blacktop Road, some 10 or 12 miles west off of this Glen Highway, which ran basically north and south from Anchorage up to Glen Island, Alaska, if you ever look at it on a map. And we had mile markers there, and over a mile marker, I think it was 121, about 10 or 12 miles back west towards the Talkeetna Mountains. This Nelchina herd, that's where they were at the time the game warden found them for me. It took me back there the first time, and then from then on, I went back there on my own. But hell, I can't remember. I lost my.
That's all right. And so from Alaska back to Missouri, Harv, and you killed 2 whitetails just this past season, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I did. But one of them was here behind my house where I told you I shoot them about. I live here at the edge of town. Agriculture's near to me. We have no planning and zoning. I shoot my P-Dog rifles here, and whatever I want to do, I can do. But then I shot a nice buck over in that area where I had you bow hunting, Tom.
And are you still hunting? Are you still shooting these deer with recurves?
Well, I don't. What I shoot them with now is a Hoyt made years ago a compound 48 inches long with little old silver dollar wheels. When I was about 80 some odd, my dang old rotor cuffs from lifting weights and pitching baseball and all that finally catch up with you. So I had trouble. I was kind of like old Eitler. I think something struck Eitler here a few years ago, and he had to go clear down to 35, 40-pound recurves. Mine still does, Fred does. But anyway, so I didn't know what in the dickens I was going to do, and my son Kurt Ebers found that Hoyt made a finger bow back in 10 or 15 years ago called a Hoyt Tribute, and had a little over 65% round, real smooth little, wheels on it. And so what I did, I just set it up like my recurves over the years. I just shoot it with fingers and a little piece of leather on the arrow rest. And I'm a gap shooter, if y'all know, I'm sure what a gap shooter is. And so it doesn't bother my shoulders to break over that little old soft wheels on that bow. And then I shoot it, I can break over about 48 or 50 pounds. And then, then when I come on back to my anchor, I'm only holding 15, 16 pounds. And that doesn't bother my left shoulder rotor cuff. And I shoot quite accurate, as Tom knows. I mean, I can shoot pretty darn accurate out to a deer's hurting out to 35 yards. I'm not going to take a 35-yard shot. But anything inside of 25 yards, I'm going to kill it. Oh, there you are.
I certainly wouldn't put my money against you, Harv. And, I think you've got it pretty good. I know you don't care too much about those whitetails, but gosh, I'm kind of jealous myself. I mean, I think Missouri's a heck of a whitetail state, and I have to admit, I am a bit of a whitetail fanatic. I live in Pennsylvania, Harv, and I wish we had more mature deer here. We've got a lot of hunters, and it's tough to get them to 4 or 5 years old. But I got another confession to make, Harv and Tom.
Uh-huh.
I'm also left-handed.
Well, the only way to go. No wonder we like you, Berg, Kristen.
So,
You're part of the clan, right, Tom? We'll take him under our wing and have fun with him.
well,
Just a, Fred,
go ahead, Tom.
you're a clone of Fred Bear, though. I think Fred was right-handed, but he was left eye dominant, so he learned to shoot left-handed. But
that's correct.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I'm definitely left eye dominant, and I write with my left hand and I shoot left-handed. Interestingly, I swing a baseball bat and I golf right-handed and swing a bat right-handed, and I think that's probably just because that's how they taught me when I was a little kid, And an interesting baseball trivia for you, Harv, because I'm sure you're a baseball fan, considering your background. One great Hall of Fame player who I was certainly nothing like, but I had this in common with him, and so I took it because it was about as close as I would ever get. You know who else threw left-handed and batted right-handed? Was the all-time stolen base king, Rickey Henderson. He was a lefty who batted right-handed.
Well, I haven't heard of Henderson's name for 50 years. I can't remember. But I remember he was quite a renowned player.
Yeah. He was. Yeah, he's passed away now, but he played for the Yankees a lot of years and the Oakland A's, and those were his two main teams, and he was the stolen base king. Anyways, guys, it is sort of time to wrap it up, but I got to tell you, that I knew Tom. See, Tom had reached out to us about this mule deer that he took with Harv's old bow. And I said, man, that would make one heck of a podcast episode. Give everybody a chance to listen to these two gentlemen, share some of their memories of many decades of bow hunting and how, the generations come and go, but it's this love of bow hunting. It's the love of the archery. It's the shared experiences outdoors and the friendships that you make along the way that make it all really, really special. So I can't thank both of you enough for making this, hour plus of your time available to us.
Well, it was my pleasure, Kristen.
And maybe we'll Arkansas 2 years.
Yeah, we're going to see you in 27, Kristen, and have coffee, you and I and Tom, at my lands, Little Rock, Arkansas, at the next convention of the Pope and Young Club in April of 2027, and we'll have fun talking about this podcast. But I will finish with one thing. Since we've got so much in common now, and especially since we're all shooting correctly left-handed, I'll have to put together a 3 or 4 day hog hunt someplace, and all three of us will go chase some hogs sometime, Kristen. I know Tom would be for it.
I'm up for that. Let's do that in December down in Texas. You surely, Harv, you've got some ins with some ranchers down there where we could go find a few pigs to poke.
Absolutely. We'll if your itinerary will allow you to get away, and I have a hunch Ebers and Vanasche can get away, we'll do it. I enjoyed our morning, gentlemen. Thank you both.
We might even film that. We might even be tempted to film that one, Harv, for Bowhunter TV or something. A couple, a legend like you and Vanasche out there shooting pigs, and man, I could probably learn half a lifetime's worth of bow hunting wisdom in just 3 days' time.
Well, we'll look forward to being your mentor, by golly.
Oh boy, I would take it. Well, again, guys, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for listening to the Bowhunter podcast, and we'll see you next time. And like Harv said, I'll see those guys at the Pope and Young convention in Little Rock. But first, some hog hunting. So thanks again, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Kristen. Bye, Tom. Bye, gentlemen.
Thanks for downloading the Bowhunter podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Bowhunter magazine on your local newsstand or connect with us online at bowhunter.com.